Yes, people, back in the building. Welcome to Pros Only Sports and welcome back to another episode of United State of Mind. Hope everybody's been good so far this year. It's been a good year, a good start to the year for myself too. And I'm glad to be back doing some more United content for all you people out there who are going to tune into this. I wanted to do something a little bit different, and I think it's going to take a bit of a different theme moving forward for this segment of the channel, where we're going to be asking a lot more questions of our listeners because I want people to kind of really assess things alongside me when I ask these questions. And the one question I want to ask today and try and assess today is has Ten Hag done well at United? Obviously, we've come through the halfway point in the season, gone through 19 games in the league, and we know where we are in the various cup competitions, and we'll break it down a little later on. But I felt like after that game against Arsenal yesterday, at the time of recording was yesterday, to kind of, assess his time, Ten Hag's tenure so far as the Manchester United manager. So, I mean, before we do anything, people, make sure you're hitting that like button, hit that subscribe button as well. If you're new, hit that notification bell and all that good stuff right there. Hit the socials down below there on the screen for yourselves. But yeah, has Ten Hag done well at United? And I'm here to try and break everything down. So, as I mentioned, at the halfway point, United find themselves fourth in the Premier League, level on points with Newcastle. Bit of a surprise one with Newcastle, but maybe not so much of a surprise in terms of what they've been trying to build, and it's kind of coming into fruition for their club as well. Find ourselves in the semi-final of the League Cup, an opportunity at silverware early on in the season. We play Nottingham Forest on Wednesday. Hopefully, we can navigate that and get ourselves back to Wembley and try and end this trophy drought at the back end of next month. We are into the last 32 of the Europa League, have to play Barcelona over 2 legs and potentially progress from there into the last 16. We're in the 4th round of the FA Cup, which I think is happening this weekend. I think so. It might be I think it's happening this weekend for sure, in terms of that. And yeah, like that's where we stand, and for me personally, at the beginning of the season, my thing was a trophy for Ten Hag in his first season is probably his biggest priority, simply because it just gives him a bit of leeway with the board and the fans to kind of continue the process that he wants to, in terms of what he wants to do for the club and how he wants to build the club. I wasn't expecting us to be battling, or we're battling for top 4. Obviously, we don't know where we may end up, because we can end up from anywhere from 2nd to 4th. To be honest with you, the way it's looking. Let's hope we can just continue momentum after that setback against Arsenal. Let's get back onto the winning trail. But the way it's looking right now, it's like we're going to be comfortably in that top 4 at the halfway stage. You have to have an almighty collapse to not find yourself in there at this stage. Having won 12 games already this season, it's 12 out of the 19. It's a good percentage right there. So I mean, when I look at that, I'm saying to myself, yeah, that is pretty interesting from that perspective. And if we're talking about Ten Hag's win percentage overall, he's won 70% of his games at the time of recording after the Arsenal defeat, which is the highest of any manager through 30 games at the club. So like that's already good reading for Ten Hag right now as well. But we need to just kind of break it down a bit more into how we even gotten into this position, because to be honest with you, I thought we'd end up, around similar position, 5th, 6th at the end of the season, or ended this season under his first year, simply because of some of the plays that we had left over. Ralph Rangnick kind of maybe overstated that we needed to sell 10. It's probably a bit unrealistic in terms of selling 10 in one window. It's probably going to be over a few windows. Maybe he's right. But I thought by the core majority of those players would still have to stay because of the large contracts that they're on and the length of contracts that they're on, and the lack of suitors that they would have. That we would still find certain elements of poor performances from some of these players, because they're still in the squad. Now, on the other hand, there's been an injection of some players that have come in through the summer window. So Ten Hag spent about 200 million and brought in 6 players. Obviously, Eriksen came in on a free. Casemiro, Martinez, Anthony, Malacia, and I think it was Tom Heaton who came in as well, to make it 6 signings. And I think 5 of them came straight into the first team. So that obviously that injection kind of changed the trajectory of the team, because then you're taking away the likes of Fred McTominay from that midfield. Luke Shaw is having to up his levels again, with some additional competition. We didn't really have anybody on the right hand side, so Anthony comes in there and fills that void. And then obviously Martinez replacing Harry Maguire, who was constantly making a lot of mistakes, and we have a bit more of an assured defender who can partner Rafael Varane. So, that kind of, created something, a bit of an injection that we kind of needed into the squad, something fresh, because, it was becoming very stale with some of those players, and some of those players needed to be moved on, or at least be put onto the bench and become squad players to just kind of contribute from time to time. But anyway, in terms of Ten Hag, now what he's been able to do, I believe, is, a setting of standards. I feel like, when you look at those first two games in which we caught defeats at the beginning of the season, that second game against Brentford was probably a rude awakening for him in terms of what he was walking into in terms of this squad and this league. Now, when I say a setting of standards, trying to create a status quo. So, like, at the end of the day, I feel like it's important for any manager to come into a new club to set standards and say, I'm the person that's going to be leading this team. Decisions that I make for you guys will also fall on my head. So we all will either take the accolades if we are successful, or we'll take the punishments if we fail. And in that game, if Brentford ran 13.1 kilometers or whatever it was more than Manchester United on that day, and it showed in terms of the result, because we weren't working hard enough or as hard with that team, against that team, Ten Hag made it important to know that it's not just the players' fault, it's also my fault. So then they take a rest on the Sunday and go back into training on Monday. They are made to run those additional kilometers that they failed to run or match the Brentford side. And he decided himself, and that story is well reported, that he decided that he would join in with the team. A very grueling thing to do at the start of a season, but it was important, because what it did was it set a status quo. It also kind of made players aware that the manager is here dying by his decisions, as well as you dying by your decisions on the pitch. And so if you don't want to do stuff like this across the course of the season, you have to up your levels. And that's what's happened in terms of the team. They've upped their levels tremendously, just in terms of working hard, work rate on the pitch. That's something that, the one thing that a lot of United fans were criticizing this team last season, when you look at it, it's a stark difference this season. I found it also important to state that, you have to, in order to create a winning culture, you have to create winning habits. Now, I don't know if a lot of people do remember, like last season, we saw a lot of flicks on Instagram, in training or after training, the players would put up things like winning team, and people be smiling and all hugging each other and all of that. That's all smoke and mirrors. Those are illusions. They're not real. Like, we understand that we have a large social media presence, and so if you put a lot of players together, smiling and looking like they're having fun in training, it does well for social media and likes and clicks and all of that type of stuff. But that's not necessarily doing anything. Now, I think Ten Hag has come in and tried to place winning habits, or try and get the team, adjusted to winning habits. So in training, I'm sure it's very, very competitive. I remember seeing a clip of Malacia and Dallo going at each other at like an under 21 tournament for their respective national sides. I'm sure training is like that, where they'll be playing 11 aside, and both sets of players on either side are absolutely going for each other in training. That is a part of creating a winning culture, creating a winning habit. You want to win on the training field, you'll win on the match day. That is important. I think other things like, probably introducing curfews, for some of these players. I'm sure that's happening, because we're not seeing, these guys, like getting caught outside, like going to a club or anything. It's not happening anymore. Like, we're not seeing that like we've seen under previous managers. Like, if anything, if that's happening, it's happening behind closed doors. Phones are getting taken away or whatever. Don't put that on social media, because it sends out the wrong kind of message. In terms of people's, even their social media presence, the way they eat, and all of these different types of things. I think that's something that has come into the team, into the squad, and it's been made clear across the board, so that everybody knows that in order for us to win stuff, we need to change the way we think, and we need to change our habits, change them from habits that will help you lose, and change them into habits that will help you win. And I think that's something that's coming into the team. I think that kind of leans into my next point, where there's been this kind of emphasis on putting football first. I think that's something that Ten Hag mentioned in his first press conference, where football should be number one, two, and three for the actual football club. So I mean, like, I think putting football first is very, very important. We've seen ourselves lean towards more the commercial side of football, and that's understandable because it's a business at the end of the day now. Money is a big thing in football, so you have to kind of lean towards that. And obviously it's about striking the right balance. As a football club, you have to have important emphasis on the football and operation as well as the commercial operation. But I think the switch in focus on the football and understanding that if we do well on the pitch, everything else will flow. That's important. And the managers come in straight away and said that is what I care about, and that's what I want to implement within this team. And so when I look at that, I say to myself, look, that's important, that us as fans have a manager that actually cares about the football club and what we do on the pitch. He doesn't care about anything else. So he's not going to be swayed by, people in the background trying to get him to face up to cameras. Like, you see a lot less of these team viewer kind of things after games now on social media. I don't know if it's stopped, but I haven't seen a lot of that kind of stuff anymore. It's like, because those things aren't important. Once a game is finished, the manager wants to get his players into the tunnel and just he wants to give them a rundown on the game, maybe congratulate them, let the guys, at least have an idea that they did well in these areas and a little bit less in these areas, and then we'll have a rest and we'll be back in training the next day and we'll actually assess how the game went properly. Like, and so that's important too. You have to put football first because that's how we become successful as a football club. Like, and I think that's something that Ten Hag has been able to instill in the team as well. Now, the next point is more towards getting the best out of the players at your disposal. Now, that is something that I feel like every manager, when he comes into a new team, he's not going to have the luxury like you have at United, right, to just get 200 million war chest, go out there and sign 5-6 players. Like, Ten Hag has that, or has had that, but he's also had to contend with players that have underperformed, some of them for several years, in in their time at Manchester United or during their careers, and he's had to contend with players that have gone through their worst ever Premier League finish, for example, and he's had to get the best out of them. And so you look at players like Luke Shaw. Luke Shaw is obviously a very contentious player within the fan base. People are split on him. I feel like ability wise, he's probably one of the best left backs in the world if he's on it every single day. But the problem is he's not on it every single day. And so we've always questioned, why is he there? And why is it taking players from the academy to come in there and help him boost his performance? Or, us having to buy a young, relatively unknown Dutch left back to come in there and take your position to get you to kick you into gear. You look at the bounce back that Rashford has made, and I think that's more to do with, he lost his confidence, and obviously recovering from injury. And, like, you look at the year he's had, losing the Europa League final, losing in the Euros final, like, excuse me. Like, so, I mean, it's one of those things where it's just like, he's done very well to get the best out of some of the players that he has at his disposal. Like, it's important that, you got to get more from some of these players. You got to draw everything out of some of these players. So you look, as I said, look at Wan-Bissaka. He was exiled, essentially, being made available for transfer in the summer. And look at the way he's bounced back. Dallow's injury and obviously coming back from the World Cup. Wan-Bissaka has been playing out of his skin. Now, I don't know how long that's going to last, and I don't know how that looks for him long term, but at least for the period of games that we've seen him in, he's not, kind of leaning back to some of the mistakes that he's made previously as the starting right back for Manchester United. When I look at, I'm just trying to go across the board and just see who else he's like really markedly improved. Let me just see. I mean, Martial's always had the ability. It's the injuries that's really held him back. But yeah, I'm looking at the people that specifically that we're looking at that have really improved their performance out of players that have been there, and that's obviously Rashford and obviously Luke Shaw, Wan-Bissaka. in recent weeks. Dalot, even like, I mean, I know Dalot, there's a bit of a combination of, I feel like him getting a loan move very early on in his career helped him, especially in terms of adversity, and maybe not being a guaranteed starter for a big club in AC Milan. But that experience helped him coming back, overcoming some of the injury problems that he had early on in his career has also helped him. But then obviously having a manager that's trusted him and say, you're going to be my starting right back has helped him. So Dalot is also another player that's benefited, so it's always important to get the best out of the players at your disposal. And obviously Ten Hag has been lucky to be able to get some more players in to kind of help his process kind of move along a lot further. But, you look at the likes of Fred, coming into the squad. And Fred's not been bad throughout his career. It's just he's been tagged with McTominay throughout his career, and it's kind of made him look like he's a worse player than he actually is. I think he offers a lot of things, but maybe played in the wrong position. Now you get to see him in his actual position as a number 8, linking play from midfield to attack, and it's actually good to see him. And obviously he's a good squad player. I believe he's like the highest Brazilian appearance maker for United now as well, which is also very interesting out of some of the players that have come to the club as well. But yeah, that's a very important thing as well. And he's been able to improve players so much in his time at the club. And obviously it's testament to some of the things that I'm going to discuss a little later. But like, obviously the next kind of point is obviously promoting youth. And that's something that's always been important in terms of Manchester United's history. And you look at somebody that's really emerged this season in Alejandro Garnacho, him coming into the side has been very, very important, because obviously it continues that tradition of us promoting youth. Now, whether that kind of was something that was always planned, I think it kind of was. I feel like he was on the verge of, jumping into that first team picture. But obviously it takes a manager to be brave in that regard to get him to give him the opportunity. And so, we've had situations with previous managers where by circumstances, the only reason why certain players made their debut, I mean, you look at the likes of Marcus Rashford, he probably wasn't going to make his debut at that particular point in time, but he made his debut because of circumstance, under LVG. I'm just trying to think, people like Brandon Williams, I think it was a matter of circumstance. Luke Shaw was, very injury prone and just out of form and whatnot. And he got his opportunity and kind of took it and ran with it a little bit, So, I mean, you look at Garnacho, Kobe Mainoo as well, him making his debut in the League Cup against Charlton in the last round. There's players that are like on the verge of potentially joining those two players this season, depending on how far we go in certain competitions and where we are in the league and whatnot, and where we are in certain games where these players can get opportunities. But, you saw the likes of Charlie Savage, Zidane Iqbal as well, getting some opportunities at the back end of Ranić's tenure. But then obviously in pre-season, these two guys got themselves an opportunity themselves from the academy to try and showcase what they can do. And I'm sure there's some more talent as well that can be coming through as well. So, that's something that we have to keep an eye on. And obviously it's important that Ten Hag continues to look at the academy. And I feel like there's also been some reports that he's also taking a bit more of an active role in the under 23s development too, so that at least he can actually see what's going on, see who the emerging talents are, and see who can fit into his squad moving forward. But man management has been key. I mean, you look at this Sancho situation, and I'm going to discuss the Sancho situation in a lot greater detail in a later video. But that's the epitome of man management, right? This is a player who has come in, big price tag, a lot of chatter, and I've spoken about, the amount of money he's on and whether he was really worth the money we gave him and all of that. And obviously I'll discuss all of those types of things in a later video on Sancho. But his handling that situation has been perfect. Obviously Sancho goes missing, not on team sheets and things of that nature. And, he's in press conferences being questioned on those types of things and says, obviously I think in the beginning it was more like injury focused. And then, he's actually had to come out and be truthful about the situation, like Sancho's not fit enough to play the way he wants his wide men to play. Mentally the player's not right, and he's had to go and try and be taken out of the firing line and try and rebuild his confidence mentally and whatnot. And that's testament to man management, being able to recognize that your players are not at the level that you require them, take them out of the firing line and deal with the situation so that they can come back and be a lot stronger. And that's something that's happening with Sancho right now. I feel like, even look at the Wan-Bissaka situation, like you get dropped, you basically surplus to requirements, but he hasn't burnt the bridge with the player to the point where the player will be like, oh, I don't want to play for you, or I don't want to play under you. I feel like Ten Hag has this kind of personable character, which, I think some of our previous managers haven't had. Oli had it in abundance, but wasn't a great tactician, for example. LVG, Mourinho, has been billed as this kind of guy, negatively in the media. I don't think he is that. I feel like he also is a personable guy. The guy's got children, so he has to be personal. Otherwise, how are you going to connect even with your own children? You got young players that you have to work with pretty much all the time. But it's been, maybe overstated that he's not great with young players and all of that. I mean, I feel like you just have to be able to strike the right balance between disciplinarian and a good man manager. You have to understand the personal side for people. And I feel like Ten Hag comes across as a very personable person. You saw that early on in his tenure, very eager to shake people's hands, say hello to people, and kind of give off that friendly vibe. And I feel like across the squad, there's not going to be anybody that hates him. Like if you're not playing, you're not playing, and there's a reason why. And I'm sure that him and his coaching staff will tell you why you're not playing. But they'll also leave the door open. It's up to you to prove to me that, I've left you out, but I can bring you back in if you can prove to me that you're worthy of being brought back in. And I feel like, even with the Sancho situation, he's not let go. He's not let that situation die. He's not said, what, you're out of the team. I'm not happy with what you're doing. Like, he's like, okay, I understand. We're gonna put you on a program, and this is what you need to do. And it's up to the player at that point to say, okay, I want to buy into that, and then we'll move forward. And I guess that's what's happening right now, because we see him now back in training, and he's looking a lot fitter. We're going to be able to see how that looks in a few weeks' time when he gets integrated back into the first team and into games and stuff. So, man management is very important just across the board, and being able to strike the right balance between the two of being a disciplinarian and a great man manager is important. And I feel like Ten Hag has been able to show that. Now, we're just going to touch on a slight criticism that I think I've seen a lot of people, and I've maybe seen myself as well, in terms of Ten Hag's in-game management. Now, there's been a lot of situations where, or not, I wouldn't say a lot, but it's probably been overstated a lot by supporters, where his in-game management is maybe lacking at times. Now, for me, I can understand why people say it, but at the same time, it's like you can't be too critical, because one, where you have to understand that this is the highest level that he's managed at before. So he's still learning. We're human beings. We always learn all the time. And I don't like the fact that people always kind of say, like, expect the managers to be perfect. Like, we have a Pep Guardiola who, in the Champions League final only a couple of seasons ago, right, made one of the biggest mistakes in his career at Manchester City, and then led to them not winning the Champions League. This is going to be one of the greatest managers of all time when everything's all said and done. He makes mistakes. So why are we as fans, getting onto Ten Hag for making a slight error in judgment, in a particular game that's cost us a game? It happens. That's what happens in management. That's what happens in life. You will make a mistake. It's always about how you learn from that mistake and then bounce back afterwards. Because in the Manchester City game, we go down 1-0 due to the Grealish goal. He makes a couple of substitutions. Garnacho he brings on Garnacho, who gives the assist to Rashford. We win the game. So it's like, you kind of have to just kind of keep it balanced when you're talking about these things. It's annoying and frustrating at the time, but I wouldn't call it a massive criticism of himself. Of course, people have said it at Ajax and all that. He's still learning. This is the highest level that he'll ever manage at, probably, in terms of Manchester United. Of course, he could probably go off somewhere else as well. But this is the highest level he's been at in terms of his tenure in any club at any level. So, somebody who's still learning and will continually adapt and continually change, and obviously be critical about himself and try and improve on making substitutions early. And obviously, so you have to strike the right balance. You can't, you can't just make a substitution just because you have to think about it first. Like, you have to think about how does it fit the team and the situation, the game you're in. So, it's something that people want to complain about. It's not too much of a critical point for me. But yeah, I mean, all in all, I believe that Ten Hag has done very, very well. You can just see it in terms of just like how we play on the pitch. We play a markedly different game now. I just see a lot of belief within the squad now. Like, our heads don't drop. We keep fighting back to try and win games, draw games, whatever it may be in terms of the situation. It's been a very steady rise, and obviously there's still a lot more to play. And you know what? I'm actually kind of happy to watch my team again. And I feel like the players are happy. There's a lot of belief within the squad. There's a lot of togetherness in the squad, and we see that now. And so, look, I believe that Ten Hag has done well at United. But look, guys, what are your assessments on Ten Hag's time? Let me know in the comments below if you get to the end of this video. And yeah, man, look, there's so much more football to come, and there's so much more content to come as well on Pros Only Sports. So make sure you stay tuned for all of that. Make sure you're hitting that like button, that subscribe button as well if you're new. Hit that notification bell and all that good stuff right there. Hit the socials down below. Let me know in the comments, has Ten Hag done well at Manchester United so far in his tenure? Hey, that's going to be it for me, people. We'll be out. Peace.